Today, our chemistry, O-level chemistry, we are going to look at what we call metal extraction. Specifically, extraction, we are referring to the process how we can obtain a pure element from its impure state or from a state in which it is existing naturally underground. You always hear that most elements always exist in crude form or in pure form. So how we obtain them and we purify them. So what we are referring to what we call extraction. Now, specifically our extraction, we are going to look at what we call the extraction of iron. Extraction of iron metal. Don't forget that iron metal always the symbol, you always write it like that. In your chemistry, that is from senior 1. Now, when we are looking at extraction of iron metal, we are going to first consider what we call the ores of iron. Ore simply means the impure state in which a metal exists underground, or in which an element exists underground, or the crude form in which an element or a metal or an animate exists underground. And for our iron now, we are going to base on our iron. The first ore we are calling the hematite, which is going to be iron 3 oxide. Then from there, we are going to look at what we call the magnetite. Then we are looking at what we call the sympathetic iron, or the cinderite, which is iron 2 carbonate. Then we are going to look at what we call the iron what? Iron pyrite. However, we are going to rotate more on the hematite and then the magnetite. Remember, hematite we have said this is iron what? This one is iron 3 oxide. Then this one is tri-iron tetraoxide. We shall also talk about what we call the sympathetic iron, which is iron 2 carbonate. Now, to understand properly how we can extract a metal, we have to understand clearly the impurities in a metal. So the impurities here we are looking at, which are majoring in the ore of iron, we have the silicon, we have what we call the carbon, we have the manganese, the sulfur, and then the phosphorus. Now, when we are extracting iron, we have to take some steps. The first step, which you are going to consider, the first step is going to be now what we call roasting of the ore. This one is mainly done when you are dealing with what we call the hematite. Why are you roasting? This one we are calling it dry heating. You are dry heating the ore. When you are dry heating the ore, you are removing the water here. You can see the ore is having some water in it. Then when you dry heat it, which what we are calling roasting, then we are removing the water here. Remove the water, we shall obtain our dry iron 3 oxide. Then when you are going to use sympathetic iron, we are not roasting, but we are heating in oxygen. We are heating it. This explains is why we are putting here being heated in what? In air. So we are heating the sympathetic iron or the ore in oxygen. Then we are getting the iron 3 oxide. Our main emphasis should be put on iron 3 oxide. Then when we are using what we call iron pyrite, again we are heating in oxygen. When we heat in oxygen, we shall obtain the iron 3 oxide, then it's other product. But our main focus should be on the iron 3. We will try to look at iron 3 because now I'm going to take it somewhere. Now, step 2, now we are going to feed what you have obtained, that is the iron 3 oxide, and we are feeding it in a tank, which we are calling the blast furnace. So we are feeding it in the furnace, and that furnace we are calling the blast furnace. So now, members, we have said, after obtaining your ore, which is now iron 3 oxide, now we are going to feed the ore in what we call the blast what? The blast furnace. Try to look at this word properly. The blast what? The blast furnace. You can see that is a simple tank which they are using now to purify the ore. What do we do? The iron 3 oxide which you obtained from the other side, as I told you, now we are going to mix it with what we call the calcium carbonate, which we are calling limestone, then the hot carbon, which we are calling coke. This explains why now we have shown them here as other raw materials. Now, as we are going to feed our ore in the tank, we use these other raw materials. One of them is what we are calling the coke or the hot carbon. Another one is the limestone or the calcium what? The calcium carbonate. Now, when you bring now the mixture of what? The ore, which is iron 3 oxide. Then another one is what? We are putting now hot coke. Then what we have the calcium carbonate. Now inside the tank, this is our tank now, illustration of our tank. We are seeing that we have put the mixture inside, then the tank is having some pipes here. These pipes which we are calling the tuyers, and these pipes are allowing air to enter, hot air. This air we are calling it the oxygen. Air is entering. But remember, is entering in the tank. Which tank is having the carbon, is having the calcium carbonate, and is having our iron 3 oxide. Then you want to see what happens inside this tank. One of the things which occur inside the tank, the hot air containing now the oxygen, combined with the carbon at the lower level of the tank, as you can see. When now the carbon combined with the oxygen in the hot air, we form what we call the carbon dioxide. Now the carbon dioxide which you have formed, now is going to become reduced by the unreacted coke. The coke which is remaining in the tank, which was not oxidized with carbon dioxide, react with the carbon dioxide. You can see now our equation here, the carbon dioxide which has been formed at this step, now is combined with the remaining coke to form the carbon monoxide. Now after forming the carbon monoxide, our carbon monoxide again at this level, as the thing is becoming less hotter here at around 400 degrees, we are seeing that our ore which we brought will combine with the carbon monoxide in the process which we are calling our reduction. The carbon monoxide reduces our iron 3 oxide to form our molten iron with some carbon dioxide. Obviously, the carbon dioxide and other things will pass outside as the waste gases. Now remember, we are seeing that the ore is an ore because of some impurities. Which impurities we talked about here? Now what we are going to see, one of the impurities which was major, it was silicon. One of the impurities was silicon. This one which we mentioned here, silicon. So what are we going to see? The calcium carbonate which was added in the tank will decompose, form the quicklime or the calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. Now when it decomposes, what happens? This one is going to be used to remove the silicon. Remember, the silicon already in the tank, it was silicon, but it combined with oxygen which entered inside the tank to form what we call the silicon dioxide now, which we are calling the sand. Now from there, we are seeing that the calcium oxide is going to combine. Calcium oxide is going to combine with the silicon dioxide in our tank as our major impurity to form what we call the calcium silicate. This is a liquid which we are going to call the what? The slag. Now we have two things in our tank. One of them, it is the calcium silicate or the slag. Then we have our molten iron which we formed here. Now both the molten iron and the calcium silicate move at the bottom of the tank. This one you are calling the bottom of the tank, you can see at the bottom of the tank. However, the molten iron is denser than the slag. So we have our molten iron here, then we have our slag here. Then what happens, you tap off the slag, from the tank via this pipe here as I've illustrated here. Because it is on top and the molten iron is at the bottom. Then you tap off your iron here from the bottom through this pipe here now. Now the molten iron you have obtained here, members, this molten iron is impure. We call it pig iron or the cast what? The cast iron. Now, what happened with other impurities? Other impurities, we are seeing that in this iron we have now impurities manganese, and then we have impurities like phosphorus, we have impurities like carbon. Now, these ones are going to be removed from the ore, so not from the ore, from the molten iron by reacting with iron 3 oxide, which now will oxidize all of these ones to be produced as to be produced as the waste gases. Now members, remember we have said in the furnace what we have already obtained what we call the molten iron, but remember there is even the impurity of silicon, as we said. The silicon impurity which was in our ore will be oxidized by the oxygen which entered in the hot air. As we are seeing here, we have silicon, then the oxygen to form silicon dioxide. So our iron is still reserving this impurity. So how are we going to remove this impurity of silicon dioxide? So we have the calcium carbonate which we place here. So calcium carbonate is going to decompose to form calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Then the formed calcium oxide or the quick lime here, we are seeing that is the one which is going to help us to remove the silicon dioxide. So we have calcium oxide and the silicon dioxide to form what we call the calcium silicate, what we are calling the slag. So as now the slag and the molten iron will move at the bottom of the tank or the furnace, and then the iron is denser than the slag. So the slag will be on top, and you can tap it along with this pipe as you are tapping the iron along with this pipe now. As after understanding this side, let us try to summarize the whole process. As we are doing our summary, we are going to say that you have put there the roasted ore. We have the roasted ore, that is roasted iron 3 oxide. You have put your calcium carbonate in the same tank. Then you have put there your coke, which is the hot carbon. Now what are we going to see? You have passed hot air containing oxygen. So you have your carbon which you have put plus your oxygen gas. Then we are forming what we are calling carbon dioxide gas. Then the carbon dioxide gas formed is being reduced by unreacted coke. This is the coke which is unreacted to form what we call the carbon monoxide gas. Then the carbon monoxide gas which you have formed there is going to reduce our hot ore now, the iron 3 oxide, now to form what we call the iron. This iron we are saying is molten plus the gas known as carbon dioxide gas. Now we can balance our equation by putting the 3 there and the 3 there and the 2 there. Now what happened? The impurity, we had the silicon which is the main impurity reacting with oxygen gas inside the tank now to form what we call the silicon dioxide now. Silicon dioxide which is now a solid. So this one, how do you remove it? Remember we put calcium, we place there calcium carbonate. The calcium carbonate which you place there, don't forget, will break down because of a lot of temperature, high temperature, to form calcium oxide and then carbon dioxide gas. Now the calcium oxide formed will combine with our silicon dioxide, which is our main impurity now, to form what we call the calcium silicate. Calcium silicate, which we are calling now the slag. Remember we said the slag is lighter than the molten iron. As they are moving down, it will be on top, and I've already shown how you can remove this slag. Now remember the iron which you have obtained here, the iron is impure and you have to purify it. How do you purify it? You only purify the molten iron by heating it. Heating molten iron with what we call iron 3 oxide to oxidize the impurities like manganese, oxidize impurities like manganese, impurities like carbon, impurities like phosphorus. Remove them. The gaseous ones will pass by the pipes on the furnace. Then the slag we obtained, what is the use of the slag? It is mainly used for making glasses, and then the iron which is pure, which you have obtained, this one you know properly, for making wires, electric wires, making the iron bars, don't forget about that, making iron sheets and many other uses. So members, next time we shall look at another method. That one is enough for today.